I think it's on. Hey, what's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic start to your week. It is Tuesday, August 31st, last day of August, coming into Labor Day weekend, I believe. You get a lot of these weekend holidays mixed up. Anyway, check in with you guys on a Tuesday, starting the week off. I'm gonna do a bit of a quick chat tonight. Not gonna go super long. Wanted to get some questions answered. If you guys have any questions that you have, typically can't get or can't jump in on the Saturday chat, you can get in on this one. I can go over cams, intake, porting, throttle bodies. Those have been pretty high on the list, especially considering I just got through doing the throttle body testing with the Hellcat. Just whatever you got going on, let me know. Latest video that I posted up has been a draggy in, Velocito. We'll leave it at that. Dad's checking in saying he's hitting the sack, but gave a thumbs up. Appreciate it, bud. Oh, by the way, beginning the night off, it is Propel Grape. Hits pretty hard. Hits kind of like Powerade, but I like it. We're giving it a shot, and it's purple, so, that's the way it works. So, let me see who all we got in so far. We got Rick. What's up, man? Hope you're having a good one. But, yeah, I've been playing with the draggy a lot. I haven't taken the rest of the fleet out. That reminds me, before I get out of here, I've got to grab that thing, because I'm about to be draggy in pretty much everything. I am having more fun with that thing than I really should be having. Really like that thing. So anyway, it looks like, I don't know if I got the thing figured out with the audio, but it seems to be working a little bit better. The audio on the draggy being synced up. At least it was on the last video. So hopefully it stays that way. Mike Corleone said, getting information, got the arm flex. I think part of that had to do with how, which things that I was monitoring. I think if you monitor too many things, it might screw up the export when it sends it into your whatchamacallit, the thing that you can send pictures through, your gallery. So, let's see, Hayden's in saying, what up, B. Mason? What's your thoughts on the car market, specifically used market? I think there's a lot of guys that are making a lot of money right now selling used cars out of their fleet. I can tell you that there's a lot of folks that, dealerships here that are willing to pay a lot of money for inventory, because people are willing to pay a lot of money for cars right now. I think the market is overinflated, and I think if you don't have to have a car right now, I certainly wouldn't be looking to buy a car right now. Been some nutty offers floating around out there, but depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something like just basic transportation, you can find that anywhere. Some of the more performance-oriented cars going for quite a bit of money right now. Randy's checking in from Middle Tennessee. What's up, brother? Rich saying he's dropping his Hellcat off to get a 2.6 upper on the 10th. Already have a one-piece drive shaft and diff brace. Do you think I need some drive shaft? Oh, it's talking about half shafts. If you're running sticky tires, yeah, you've hit the limit on what the stock stuff is going to manage. You're going to definitely need some half shafts for sure. No doubt about that. They'll last for a little bit, don't get me wrong. It's not like they're just going to shatter the first time you mat the throttle, but they will over time start to fail. Bruce saying, even B, you always recommend the Edelbrock Maggie for 5.7. Do they whine? Yeah, they do. I remember the old system was quiet. No, the Maggies do make some noise. You put an open element filter on the end of them, they will definitely not disappoint with how they sound. Either way, though, they'll certainly make the competition whine. They are just that compressor is just really efficient. So, if I'm spending money, I'm going to go with that new compressor that Edelbrock's using. Gary checked in and said, what up, B? Got the arm flex. I like it. So, let's see. What else is going on? I'm trying to think of all the crazy stuff. So, I'm going to try to be at the drag strip this Friday. Weather should be about the same as it has been. We're dealing with DAs around 2,500 feet, 2,700 feet, so it's not exactly awesome. We're real humid, so air charge is real high on all the data logs. Car's not commanding a ton of timing. I'm not going to go in there and manipulate it. I'm just going to let the tune do what it does. I could probably play with some timing and pick up some ET, but here's the funny thing. So a lot of y'all asking about timing and tuning and things like that, and oh, your car's tuned and all this other stuff, and I'm just like, oh, y'all are funny. Anyway, so one of the things that I've noticed with all of this testing, and it's real consistent, is that my car is not all that timing sensitive. I've tried throwing timing at it at the drag strip, and it just does not care, at least not in these DAs. Now, where it does matter is if I'm running the car in a real low DA condition, like 0 DA, minus 500 DA. And in that respect, I will get to an air charge that is low enough on the chart where with the stock timing table, you could feel the car lay over when it would hit it. In fact, there was one point in time where I was kind of chasing a problem that I didn't have, and went back, looked at the data log, and I'm looking at the air charge, and I'm going, oh, I got it. Okay. So through a couple of degrees of timing and like 2 cells, and it immediately cleared up the problem. So it takes a lot of density altitude. In other words, a very low DA to even get my car into where I've added any timing. And again, that's just to kind of smooth out the timing table. But in these conditions, so far, in the same night, I've gone from 19 degrees to 17 degrees and have had no change in performance of the car whatsoever. In fact, the car, if you go to HRP slips, I could bracket race this thing and pull 2 degrees of timing out of it. It's funny how the car just does not care. So in saying that, you know, it's funny. People go, oh, it's tuned. There ain't no magic sauce, at least not with my car. Throwing a couple of degrees of timing at it, doesn't care. The car just flat out doesn't care. It's just not sensitive to timing. So what we're going to try to do is, because we're running out of like interesting tests at this point, I will be running Boostane in the car. I'm going to give Boostane a shot. This will be for Friday. I took the car out again, just got back from Velocito, and I was data logging the car and was trying to figure out, you know, will Boostane do anything for me? And looking at the data, looking at knock sensor voltage, I don't think so, because there's really nothing going on in there. But we're just going to try the higher octane. And so what we're going to do is, if you look at the chart, for 93 octane to get it to 100 octane, you are looking at basically an ounce per gallon. So if you look, it's 32 ounces for 34.7 gallons. That's what it will, this second one right here. So 32 ounces treats 34.7 gallons. Basically, we're just going to Kentucky windage this thing and say, look, it's an ounce per gallon. And I'll put 9 ounces in the tank and then top it off. I usually run it about half a tank. That's why we're going to go with the 9 ounces. So to give you an idea, one of these is 32 fluid ounces. Basically, it'd be good enough for more or less, you know, depending on the octane you're trying to get to. If you've got a stock car, you could probably go to the track 4 times, half a tank of gas, burning the whole thing down, which you're not going to do anyway. And just roll with it. You're usually going to burn about a quarter tank of gas every time you go. So, you know, I would say you're, again, 4, 5, 6 trips to the track, whatever, it doesn't matter. The main thing that I'm going to look at is just the data, knock sensor data. See if the voltage goes down. I doubt that it will. I just don't know that this is going to be all that beneficial, but we're going to find out. And I will let you guys know what the results are of that stuff. But again, my car is stock boost, and have only run race gas in it for a brief amount of time to see if race gas would help. And the results were a little bit murky. Couldn't really get a solid result out of it. Couldn't get a solid answer out of it. So we shall see. Let's see what you guys are up to in here. Let's see. Ryan's asking, what should wide open throttle read on AFR? Charger RT on E85. It has stock cam as well. Stock Charger RT on E85. Well, it depends on if you're using a regular lambda meter, it's going to read the same as normal fuel would be. If you have it set for E85, meaning stoichiometric is like 9.5 to 1, if memory serves me correct. Whatever, 14.7 times 0.3 or 14.7 times 0.7. Anyway, long story short, basically you're going to be looking at, I'll tell you exactly what it should be. I don't have my calculator here. Anyway, I go off of lambda, so I don't really ever go off of air-fuel ratio, and for that car, 0.825 would be a good lambda, but I don't really, for example, and for like boosted cars, it's 0.80 would be your lambda. And of course, like I say, the air-fuel gauge will typically kind of read, they're basically converting a lambda number to a number. So you just have to set it. If you want it to read for E85, you have to tell it that you want it to read for E85 lambda, which is what you're going to need to do. But the lambda number you're looking at is like 825. Hayden's asking, what's your opinion on the new age TVS systems? They're really good because the new rotor packs are so big. They don't seem to be as snappy down low. Thoughts? Will brand go back to smaller for torque? So the new TVS stuff, they're good. The rotor packs being big doesn't make it less snappy. The rotor packs being big just makes it move more air. A lot of guys will run larger pulleys on them. You're not spinning them as hard, so you may think of it like the boost response isn't as good. But when you pull them up to their efficiency range, they're real snappy. So they're good. The larger rotor packs also add inertial drag. That's one of the big drawbacks. The bigger the blower you put on the thing, the more heat that they'll create. And they can have a tendency to, they'll have more parasitic loss. So you have to run a more aggressive pulley ratio to overcome that parasitic loss. The problem is the higher pulley ratio will increase heat. So you end up, it's like a feedback loop. So as long as cooling is good, you're fine. And obviously that starts kind of small and then ramps up the more you pulley the thing. Ryan's saying, what should AFR read? I'm showing 14.0 at wide open throttle on E85. No, you need to be reading like 12.8, 12.9. Again, and that's assuming that your gauge is it's a lambda number that's being converted to a number 4. It's set for normal fuel is what it's set for. Bruce is asking, what kind of gains could one expect? I love that word, expect, from the Joker grind on a 5.7 with the proper accommodating mods. That's a Dr. Differential question. I can tell you that, putting down somewhere around 380, 390, depending on the dyno, shouldn't be too big of a problem. But again, it depends on the dyno that you're on. So I can tell you that a lot of the milder cammed 5.7s that would show up for tuning would typically lay down somewhere around 370 to 380 at the most on that Mustang dyno. So you figure, and that's, aggressive cams, that kind of shoots all across the board. But So you figure if you convert that to dyno jet numbers, 370, it's going to be around 385, 390-ish. I know that there have been some Joker Cam cars and trucks, at least the truck that I'm thinking of that laid down right at 400 to the rear wheels. I've been told that that dyno is a little bit optimistic. So I kind of take that for what it's worth. But yeah, that's about the horsepower range you should look at. But you're going to need to have the right springs, the right lifters, the right push rods, stanky tie bars and collars, ported intake, bigger throttle body, all of it. You got to have all of the accompanying mods to go with it. And again, Ryan, going back to your question about what AFR it should read, with the Hemis will typically command a little bit richer air fuel, so that 12.8 number is about as lean as I would want to see it. Hemis typically prefer to run a little bit fat, so I'd prefer to see it somewhere around 12.5-ish, somewhere in that range. I felt like I needed to caveat that because I know a lot of guys kind of get stuck in an LS frame of mind. LS, you're typically going to run around 12.6 to 12.9 at the leanest. I wouldn't really ever want to run one 12.9, but I've seen guys even go as lean as 13.0. Ripped is asking, with a 2.6 upper pulley on his cat, will I run into heat issues? No, not really. Do I need an F1 inner chiller? No, not really. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything if you decide to go that route. Don't get me wrong. It's just, what are you going to be doing with the car? I mean, if you're just going to be playing around with it on the street, taking it to the drag strip here and there, I don't know that it's going to do you a whole lot of good. Now, that being said, with a 2.6, your manifold temps, which is in the supercharged cars, your computers for your hot spark table is looking at your manifold temps more than anything else. And you're looking at probably 155-ish. So you're going to be dipping pretty deeply into your hot spark table at that point. I might even go to 160. It's a lot of pulley for that blower. But I have seen guys go, 260 with 10% lowers, and never used a Kincaid or an F1 or anything like that. So, do you need it? No, not really. I guess the bigger question is, do I recommend it? You're getting on up there in downstream temps. I would say at that point it's probably going to be a good idea to bring maybe a Kincaid. An F1, I don't know that you would get more benefit out of an F1. You got to remember that the air is going through that cooler really fast. And so, how much heat can it extract? It'll do pretty good, but you got to remember you're still going to heat up that brick pretty quickly with that much heat. So, or those bricks, I should say. So, I'll say that it'll help, but only in the short term. It might help it be a little bit safer in cool weather. Keep in mind, those things don't really work that well in cold weather. In fact, the cool down feature for demons and red eyes and all that, I think the pivot number is 58 degrees. Anything below 58 degrees, and that thing doesn't even activate. So, for the summertime, it might be an okay idea, but I mean, the jury really is kind of still out as far as how much does it help. So, but if Octane is a concern, I would say that it would help you, especially on launch when you're overcoming inertia. Ryan's asking, also at the strip, how do you typically launch? Any tips on getting the W? Launch control, brake, and raise RPM, etc. Launch control, no. I've forgotten even how to use it in my car, to be honest with you. I never use it in any of the cars that I've driven. How do I typically launch? It all starts with the burnout. It all starts with knowing the tires that you're running, getting the pressures right there. That's really more than anything going to ensure a win or a loss. It all happens in the first 5 feet of the race. If you blow the tires off, you lose. So have a good set of tires, put a set of DBRs in the back of the car, have them aired up to around 22, 23 PSI. They are going to dead hook 99 out of 100 times. I've rarely had a set of DBRs not hook. Even when ET Streets wouldn't hook, DBRs would. At one point, the joke that I was making about DBRs is they would dead hook on a dirt road. So there's that. As far as how do I launch the car, it depends on the car that I'm driving. So if I'm driving my car, I'd stall it up to 1500 RPM and stab the throttle when the light turns green. I know that I don't have to worry about traction. Same goes for the Demons and the Red Eyes and all the rest of the stuff that I've driven at the track. It's just, they're all basically the same. More or less, a stock car is going to launch just like that. It doesn't matter if it's a Demon and I'm pulling the front tire off the ground, or my car where it's just kind of whooshing along when you stab the gas. They all work best at about that technique, 1500 RPM. Now, coming into that launch, before that, how do I do the burnout? For the supercharged cars, if it's a 309 gear car, I'll start the burnout. Traction control is always completely off when I run the cars. I go first, second, third. That's literally the cadence is wing, ding, ding. You'll see it in the ride-along videos. If it's the first pass, I will do a little bit longer burnout just to activate the compound, but I'll typically do about 2 seconds worth of a burnout. I'll roll off the throttle and the brake and just kind of carry throttle just a little bit and carry the burnout until I feel the car actually grab, and then I'll get out of it. If I felt like the burnout didn't go as well as I had hoped, or I felt something weird, sometimes I'll dry hop the car. If I don't know if track prep is really all that great, sometimes I'll just kind of bump it real quick. It's not a full hard dry hop where I'm stabbing the throttle real hard. It's just a rip, just to make sure, because I know about what the car is going to feel like at that kind of a small throttle input. If it's going to hook, it'll hook. Anyway, foot brake 1500 and then let her rip, and that's pretty much it. There's not much else with these cars. Now, if I'm driving something with a little bit more power, say like a Bravo package, or it'd have to be a little bit more powerful than that. Something with maybe, like a Whipple setup, or just a little bit more power than a Bravo package. Bravo package, you can still pretty much light switch the throttle and it'll launch on the drag strip. But if not, then what I'll do is there's kind of a walking cadence with the throttle. And the way that I teach it is for guys, when I would do the welcome to your new hot rod kind of chat, is when you get the car to the track, just say the word yoink in your head. And that's the speed that you're going to go from stalled. In other words, torquing, basically just getting the chassis loaded at about 1300 RPM, 1500 RPM to wide open throttle. So it's yoink, and that's how fast the throttle goes down. Notice I'm not light switching it. I'm actually feeling it through. And what the hell just flew up my face? What I'm feeling for and this is the part that you have to practice with, is when I'm rolling it into the throttle, I'm paying a lot of attention to what it feels like, what the suspension feels like when it actually loads up. When you feel it load up and the front end of the car comes up, I'll feed the throttle in a little bit faster at that point. As I'm feeding the throttle in, I'm feeling for any sense of wheel spin whatsoever. If I feel any, I'll hold what I've got, and then I'll kind of slow down. Have it in your head that I'm stopping, but I'm not stopping. I'm just slowing down the rate of descent, so to speak. And if the car is still spinning, once I'm starting the second half of that slower descent, I'll reach over and I'll grab a gear. I'll just click the shifter over and grab a gear. It's rare when I have to do that. Some of the higher horsepower cars that I've driven, 850, 875, I'll have to do that if the track prep's not that awesome. But normally we're on tires that you don't really have to worry too much about. But I've been doing this a long time. Basically, the video that I posted today is me practicing. That's me having fun with the draggy, but that's also me getting the car out and practicing. and you know, feeding that power, and you can hear me go, you can hear me shift it manually first to second. And then when it hits second, when I go to wide open, I kick the shifter over. That's just how I've learned how to drive these cars, is basically you're using the second gear, you're using the next gear as your traction control, so to speak. It's stuff that all of us guys learned when we were kids. So anyway, that old technique still works to this day. So that's what I'm doing. But to that point, practice. That's the main thing. Learn the car, learn what they feel like when it loads up. If you want hear another video of that practice in action, listen to the video where I'm in Foxy rowing through the gears, and you might not be able to hear it, but because the tires are noisy as hell on that car, but you can kind of hear me feeding power in first gear. And then in that run, I'm not wide open until I make the shift. I just mat the throttle and grab the gear. And I am wide open in second for about 2 or 3 seconds, and I come up off the throttle just like that, and then settle back into it. So I probably lift, like, if this is the throttle throw, I'm wide open. I'll probably lift like that, about like that. No, not that much. I'm on it. I'll lift up, and then I'm immediately back into it. So it's just throttle control. That's the main thing. So there's a lot more to the launch than just the launch. The launch is encompassing of all the times I've taken the cars out, both Hellcat, Foxy, other cars, pick something, and have been out playing with it, and of course in Mexico under, you know, but anyway, you get the idea. At the drag strip, auto or paddle shift? Auto. Auto, because I've set all my shift points where I want them to be. Scat Pack 392 is a 614, 222, 232 duration, and 112 LSA big cam for a 392. Yeah, not really. Used to be considered a little too tight, but 614 actually looks a lot like a cam that I put together. Not about. It was the second cam. I actually made some of this power out of any of the cams that I put together. A little bit less lift, a little bit more intake duration, the same exhaust duration, same LSA, but it's going to depend on what your intake center line is. I would prefer to see that cam on like a 107 intake center line, if at all possible, and make it real punchy through the mid-range. Chances are it's either 108 or 109 though, which is just as good. So I think you're going to be happy with it. I would argue that it's going, so what's going on with your cam? Let me explain to you what's going on with your cam. So 222 has been found to be a pretty common duration number on the intake side for Hemis, because the heads flow like crazy. So they're trying to ramp the lift up a little bit on a 614. It's gonna be a little bit harsh on lifters, so Hellcat lifters, but get some good push rods and stand key tie bars and collars. And I would also get 1516 PSI 1516 springs for it. 232 is a little on the long side. You're definitely going to have long tubes for this thing. So don't forget that. This cam is not going to do you any favors unless you have long tubes to promote scavenging down low. Those will be a big help up through about 45 to 5,500 RPM. 112 LSA. So the 112 LSA, it's sound good. It's going to, again, you want that tighter LSA. It'll be punchy through the mid-range. I would, for your car, I would prefer to see maybe a little bit less exhaust duration, a little bit more intake duration, but I mean, we're splitting hairs here. It's a good cam. It is going to be a bit choppy though. You may find it to want to try to push a little bit at idle. Your tuner is probably going to want to set your idle to around 800, probably 8.25, give or take. Ryan saying full ton. Oh, Riff saying thumbs up. Yep. White Knuckles saying, just watch the tuning school HP tuners do a VP fuel shootout on a Hellcat. Made good power on MS 109 and did well on 93 Octanium. Was interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see what they come up with sometimes when they're testing that stuff. Bernard said, hey, I have a 285 pulley, 1050 injectors, Diablo tuned PCM and TCM, as well as a 309 gear in my Hellcat. Is there anything as far as gains with a leg maker intake, or is it just sound? It's just sound. And I mean, it is just sound. It's a good looking bit of sound though, but it's just sound. I'll put it to you like this. On your combination, we've tested the AFE intake. And keep in mind, guys, when you start getting into this stuff, it's all basically the same. So we tested the AFE versus the stock airbox with a K&N filter. The stock airbox with a K&N filter was the faster of the two intakes. The car didn't lose anything with the AFE intake. So don't get it twisted. The car didn't lose power, but it sure as hell didn't gain any power. And that car, again, 285 upper, very similar to your car, went 970 something, like a high 970 at 140 something miles an hour. Anyway, really, really good air, but that's just the time frame that we were testing those parts. And again, I mean, you know us, we're testing everything at the drag strip. It doesn't matter what it is, it's going to the drag strip for testing. Or if when the drag strip closes, we're going to do it with a draggie. So whatever. But to really get the most out of the testing, you have to leg the car out. You've got to get it under high load on the back half of that track. And that's really where the difference lies, to be honest with you. You've got to be able to leg the car out on the big end, put it under a high load. And we just could not get that open element filter to do any better on that car. So I'd say spend your money somewhere else unless you want the noise. And by the way, I decided against even bothering testing the JLT intake, and I'll tell you why. Number one, the damn thing's $419, and not for nothing, but if I'm spending $419, I want to get some kind of guarantee for increase in performance. I saw a lot of testing with that thing that wasn't showing any real gains on a stock car. And going back to the testing that we did on that 285 car, I know that I said I wanted it for the noise, but then I started thinking about it and talking to some folks, and because I haven't had to live with a car with an open element filter since my Lightning. And that was a long time ago. And I never even really noticed any more noise out of it. Well, plenty of guys have said, look, we kind of get tired of it after a while. So anyway, long story short, decided I would put that money to better use. Buying detailing stuff for my car, keeping everything looking good, running good, maintaining it properly, all of that. I'm just going to reallocate those funds into that kitty, so to speak. Because it's just not worth it for me to throw money, good money after bad. And in this case, it would be throwing hard-earned money after a result that I've already tested in a car that has a significantly higher airflow demand than my car has, only to find out that there was literally no gain. None. Like zero. And it was almost funny because, you start looking at it and you go, dang, I mean, is there something wrong with the car? Like, why are you not gaining? Why is this part not working? And it doesn't work because the stock stuff is really good. And to that point, the other thing that I may try again is ran into a weird situation where I had a fuel quality issue kind of sneak up and bite me. I may try at the track, because remember last time I did this, I did it on the street. I may try pulling the filter for a couple of passes, see if the car picks up anything. I doubt it will. Rift is asking Brennan if he's on E. Dr. Div saying, what are thoughts on the setup I sent earlier? Spin it to 6,500 tops. We're going to do a custom one on it soon. Well, so what he's asking is he's got a customer that came to him with a cam that he picked from the bottom of the page on a catalog. Yeah, mid 230s, 242 or something like that cam. It looked like a cam that I would put together for a 440, like a good street 440 or a 426. Would work really well with a positive displacement supercharger, but it was high duration on a 113, but it was using one of these high ram, short ram type intake manifolds. That is just a recipe for disaster on the street. I am sure that car will not idle at anything below 875 RPM. It's going to want to push through the converter, which is a pain in the ass and incredibly annoying. I'm sure if you could say it would rock through the mid-range, it wouldn't even do that, because the mid-range of that car doesn't start until 5,300 RPM, at minimum 5,000, with that intake manifold in that camshaft. Oh, the other thing is it's cut on a 109. 109 for a cam like that is not that great. I can see why it's cut on a 109. I've cut similar cams on a 110, but that's usually if I'm trying to stretch a tight LSA out on an intake with long runners. Or I'm trying to give it like a really hard hit at like 4,500 RPM. I'll do that, and I'll sacrifice a little bit down low to pick up more in the upper mid-range. But in this case, if you do the math on that cam, it's all wrong. That cam needs to be on an intake center line of like 107 at the most. I mean, that's just kind of the way that works. So it's not a bad cam. I just don't understand the why behind it. Like with that intake, you would want all of your events happening way early to try to get that intake to get a fit, if you're going to play within the confines of that intake, you need to not try to make power at 7,600 RPM, 7,500, 7,800 RPM. So, I mean, if the guy likes the cam, I wouldn't do a cam swap. I would just swap intakes. I'd put a stock intake on the thing, open it up, put a big throttle body on it, call it good. I mean, that's kind of the long and short of it for me. 109 will work great with that intake under long runner mode. It's not optimal, but it isn't necessarily bad either. And you've got enough duration. Even though it's got a lot of duration, the runner length will make up for it. And it's not really going to tax the runners that much anyway, because you're going to be significantly less active with the intake runners anyway with the cam that's that big, especially on that car. I'm not saying that it ain't going to be a little bit turtly, though, maybe under partial throttle, but that after the stock intake will definitely make it a little bit more drivable on the street. Now, if the guy's only building a race engine, then he's just not done tuning it yet. That setup, if he's looking to build something that makes power, and he's going to run 1 7/8 2-inch headers on it, and he's going to hit it with a shot of dope, or he's just going to expect to spool the thing to high RPM, then he's in good shape. Just get him a set of stanky tie bars and collars, make sure he's got the right valve springs. You're going to need them. PSI 15, 16 minimum. Yeah, and lightweight everything, retainers for sure. Titanium every piece that you can get, because that valve is going to be moving around a lot and it's real heavy. So that's kind of what you're going to be up against with that thing. So, I mean, it's a decent enough start. Again, you had mentioned that it's a crate motor, it's a race thing, all of that. I mean, dude, the guy spent a lot of money already on parts that somebody told him that he needed. It all depends on what he's doing with that car, truck or boat or whatever that thing's going into. But if he's only running that thing to 6,500 RPM, that intake hasn't even started becoming. In fact, that intake is just barely becoming efficient at that point. The cam, because it's on a 109, with that intake, it's probably hitting its crossover point where it would be with the stock manifold in terms of making power. So yeah, I'd say he just hasn't done, he's just not done tuning it yet. Ryan's asking, how can I get tuned by you? You cannot get tuned by me. I do not do tuning. I do not like the liability, and I have worked at a tuning shop. I have no problem helping out my fellow comrades in tunage. I'll do peer reviews every once in a while, take a look at things for guys. I'll do drag racing or drag strip adjustments, shift points, troubleshoot, things like that. But I don't do the tuning stuff. I've already seen what that can do to your brain, and that makes me crazy already thinking about it. So we're not saying, hey B, got the ball out of the shades. Like it. Loose. But that's why I don't do the tuning, man. Like I say, there's a few cars that I tune here locally, but that I keep up with, I should say, locally. But I do not do anything for anybody right now. Riff saying, hey Sovereign. Folks are saying, what's up? What up? Let's see. Okay, saying sub B is the I think he's saying IAT in the Hellcat measured after the intercooler breaks or before. It is measured before. It's a manifold temperature. Now the inlet air, well, that's manifold temperature. The inlet air temperature sensor is measured in the boot itself. If you have a mass air car, it's measured by the mass air meter. If you have a 17 and up, it's just like the 392. It's right in the boot, right in the middle. Now, make sure that when you are looking at your air temperature sensor, I'm going to show you guys a picture of this real quick. You'll see a tab. Make sure that the tab is facing towards the throttle body. So it'll be like a circle and then a little tab like this. Okay. Make sure that that little tab on your connector is facing the throttle body. Okay. This would be where your filter is, whatever kind of filter you got over here. That's your filter. Make sure it's facing that way. The reason why is because the sensor is actually built kind of like a Q-tip. I'm going to draw you guys this little image here. Right down the center, if I can do this and have it make sense and have it not look like a dick. Okay. So the sensor, this guy's heading out to Velocito. The sensor looks like this. Think of it like a paper clip that you've just kind of bent like that. When you look at it, you need this area facing the direction of flow. Okay. If it's not, what'll happen is you'll shield that little is what measures the actual air temperature itself. So to the sensor, if you don't have that tab facing towards the throttle body, what happens is the air just sees this. And what'll happen is that this sensor, if it doesn't have air going through it, it can get actually heat soaked. So you'll show a higher inlet air temperature than you really have. So always remember, have your tabs facing towards the throttle body in the direction of airflow. If you do that, you'll never get it wrong. I've seen a lot of cars where it's all kicked over, kind of cattywampus or whatever. And if you think it doesn't make a difference, it can. And it's just making sure that everything is put together, put back together the right way. Don't just stab it and think that you're good. You're not. Make sure that tab is facing the right direction. Dr. Deuce saying, Stanky for the win. Absolutely. Callus is asking a good question. So he's saying sometimes he sees folks at the drag strip putting ice on top of their engine. Is this dangerous? Not if you have a naturally aspirated car. Typically, that is not going to be a problem. Where you can run into problems, although it's like, I don't know, it's more fairy tale than anything else, okay? But this can happen. So just we'll leave it at that. But what can happen is, let's say you take ice and you stick it. It's hard to screw up a Hellcat supercharger, because a Hellcat supercharger, you can almost think of it as being upside down in a way, where the rotor pack is at the bottom and it's feeding the lid, which is then feeding the bricks around the side. But what can happen is you have this really hot engine and you take really cold ice and you sit it on top of that lid. There's some things that can happen. One is, if it's really humid, you can get condensation inside the hat on that supercharger. Will it hurt anything? I don't know. Your engine runs on gasoline and air. It doesn't run on water. It's not really water injection, but you get the idea. You could get some condensation in that hat, or underneath the lid. I don't know if that's a problem or not, but anyway, there we have it. The big issue, though, is contraction. Is that aluminum is trying to contract, but the rest of it is hot, and it still kind of is expanded. And these are all assembled pieces. This is all stuff that's bolted together, and there have been reports of issues where guys have packed not a Hellcat. I've never heard of this with a supercharger on a Hellcat, but it could happen with a Whipple if you think about it. But anyway, you pack the thing full of ice, and it's unevenly heated and unevenly cooled. And the tolerances are incredibly tight on a supercharger, like just itty bitty, thousandths of an inch tolerances. And when things aren't all even, they can kind of get a little bit out of whack. And a little bit out of whack can mean that maybe your rotor barely scrapes the actual case, okay? It's little things like that. It's rare that you get like a catastrophic failure, although I have seen Whipples fail catastrophically. And I had questioned whether or not they had been iced. But I no comment. So take that for what it's worth. But the idea here is it dangerous? Usually not, no. Guys have been doing it for years. I don't think that it's dangerous on a Hellcat, but on other applications, it possibly could be. Aside from the fact that you're getting water all over your engine, because invariably the bags rip, you get water, all this other stuff, and you get standing pools of water, that can, obviously it's going to find a way out. You're kind of dripping water up to the Christmas trip, to the staging beams, and you can sometimes get flagged for that, or just the fact you just don't want water around there. So, a lot of reasons not to do it, but I don't think that it's a common practice. I don't recommend it, but it's a common practice that I don't think anybody's going to stop doing anytime soon. Ruben's asking, what's happening to B-Makes? What tire recommendations for Bogart Front Runner 18x6 street or strip use? If I think Mickey Thompson makes it the SR Front Runner, it'd be an 18x6 Front Runner, I think, is what you're going to want to run. 18x6 is starting to get into normal street car width, though, and I don't know that there's an SR that would fit it, but you'd have to take a look at Mickey Thompson. They do have some SRs that I think will fit that. But always remember to run high pressure stems, at least 80 psi stems in your fronts, no matter what. Ripped is saying, going back to what you're saying about the intakes for the Hellcat, I think they become more useful when you turn up the boost. Define it. See, here's the problem. We've tried, again, you got to remember, we're testing this on a car that runs 970s. All right. If you go back and look at Racer X's car, Excessive was running the stock airbox. and Excessive ran 940s. So you start to look at it and you go, okay, well, if it's going to be faster, when is it going to be faster? I mean, I'm definitely not going to say that no, never, they never help, they're never a benefit. My only question is, at what point do they become a benefit? We just never really got to that point with some of these cars. And I'm thinking about one in particular. Let me walk you through this scenario. This is a car with a Maggie Supercharger, 426, one of my cams, stock manifolds, cat delete, E85, meth, stock airbox, 966 horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. Put a Momentum AFE intake on it. Didn't make any more power that I can remember. So that's a 426 pulleyed Maggie with a cam running corn, and it didn't really pick. You see what I'm saying? Like, the problem is that it's hard to duplicate some of these results where people go out and go, oh, it made this much more power. Oh, it did this and that. Guys, a lot of times it's all in the testing. It's all in how long did the car sit in between runs. Was it tested during the summertime when everything heat soaks practically immediately and it never cools off? Was the car brought in off the street during the fall, run on the dyno? At some point, they put this other intake on the car and then it's run again. How are the results come to? And the problem is that the numbers won't lie, but you can certainly mislead with the numbers that you're given, which is one of the things that used to drive us absolutely crazy with all the different aftermarket parts that people would come in and ask us to install. Saying, how much can I get out of this cold air? How much can I get out of this throttle body? How much can I get out of this, that, whatever? Look, at the end of the day, the problem is that a lot of these parts never really made a difference, and we never even bothered with them on some of the builds because it just never made any sense to. Like, for example, the Bravo package. Arguably the nastiest package for a street-driven Hellcat. This is a package that will run mid-nines on the 85. All of them. Every single one of them. Let me think about this for a minute. Oh, okay. Almost all of them had stock airbox. One of the cars, this was like the great comparison deal. We had Racer X's car, and then we had this guy named Fernando. Y'all never met Fernando. Fernando, when he spoke to you just like this. And he was extremely formal, very respectful, very complimentary. Love Fernando, man. I could listen to this dude talk. Like, listening to Fernando talk I'm not kidding. It'd be like taking a bath in chocolate velvet. It was just, you wanted to just listen to this dude talk. Like, damn, homie, that's a smooth ass voice. Like, I can't even tell you how smooth this dude was. Anyway, his Hellcat did have a leg maker on it. It also had long tube headers, and it was a 2.62 gear. It had everything about that car on a dyno would be, quote unquote, giving it an advantage over Racer X's car. Understand that the two cars were identical packages, identical injector, identical fuel system, identical all the way down to the headers, the cold air intake, and the 262. The difference in power between the two cars was like 15 horsepower in favor of Fernando's Hellcat. But here's the thing, that 262 gear at that power level can skew the numbers a little bit. and it'll skew them a little bit on the high side. You have to remember that when you put the thing under load, the longer it's under load, the longer that piston is experiencing peak cylinder pressure for the amount of time it's at top dead center to the bottom of the stroke. If it's experiencing peak cylinder pressure for a longer period of time at a specific speed, car speed in this case, it's going to show a higher number on the dyno. It's just the way that dynos work. There's some inertial things to overcome and stuff like that, but the reality is that's just how it works. So we were left going, okay, well, so does Paul's car really make more power, or does Fernando's car make more power just on the dyno? In other words, the combinations are basically the same, but the gear is the thing that we were talking about. We never even brought up the long tubes or the intake. It was, okay, the gear's got to be the thing that's causing it. Just saying. So we tried it at that power level. That power level is on that Mustang dyno around 815, 830 horsepower. And on a dyno jet, it'd be around just south of 900 horsepower on a dyno jet. And that's the difference that it make. I mean, we're just going, couldn't figure it out. We've been saying, chilling like a villain, just listen to B-Mac. I like it, got the thumbs up. Everyone's saying it cost me a ton of money. Brennan saying, no, I'm tuned on 93, still learning the car. I ran a 10 249 at 138. The DA was around 1200. My goal is to hit nines, which I think he thinks he will in cooler weather. It should. That combination's a kind of a known 9-second car. Ruben saying, when you step on the gas, you'll understand you swore 10 O's and now look where he's at. Yep. Dr. Div saying it's a street truck. Is it that black truck? Is this the same truck that we're talking about? Is it that one? I have a feeling I know which truck you're talking about. If it's the same one we're talking about, then we talked about that truck before. Unless it's a different truck. In which case, Sovereign's asking, what do you think about the future prospect of a potential 426 ACR Challenger as one final send-off for the Dodge Challenger? You know, I tell you something, I don't know how well it's going to be received. Listen, like you always hear me say, there's an ass for every seat and a seat for every ass, right? But I don't see the performance advantage, but I get it. It's an ACR. Maybe it's a lightweight edition. I don't know. I can't really get too worked up or excited about a 426. Let me tell you why. That car, for the 426 to be potent in that car, keep in mind the 392 is really good, and the difference in power would have to be significant between the 392 and a 426 for it to even make sense. In other words, we would have to be talking about a car that is making somewhere north of 580, 590 horsepower for it to really make a big difference over the 392 in terms of driving. And by the way, that's probably going to be with a different intake manifold that may or may not offer a low speed response. You got to remember that the 392, before it had the short runner, the dual mode intake, you got to remember that it was initially tested with an intake very similar to the 6.1's intake. It was just a shorter runner version of it. And yeah, it made 500 horsepower, a turd to drive style to begin with. It was just terrible to drive around. I mean, it wasn't any, it was, yes, it made more horsepower, but it didn't offer up a better driving experience. It was really no different. So Same thing here. I just don't know if it would. I just looked at what y'all are talking about. So funny you should mention that. So when we got torque fixed, he got an infection. Poor guy got an infection in his nutsack, and it looked. I don't have anything in here that would even remote. It looked like he had a freaking mango between his legs. Poor dude. Didn't affect him. He wasn't fazed by it, but it was unsightly as hell. Sovereign Saint El Warpo with ISO. You know, I'm telling you, I would not blanket statement anything and say it's bad or it's good. Obviously, each system would be affected better or worse by that, the icing, but ice at your own risk. I'll just leave it at that. Let's see. Oh, Dr. Diff is saying, you seen something the other night for back-to-back testing, and they were struggling keeping stuff same intake, coolant, oil temps. That would skew the dyno results back-to-back, and it does. So when I was doing the throttle body testing, I was really lucked out because it was a night where I could literally just get in the car and run up to the burnout box. But, and this is no kidding, I had every temperature as close as I possibly could. I mean, it was almost like the thing was sitting on an engine dyno. Trying to extract data, and that's the way that you have to treat it. For every 5 or 7 degrees, you're already throwing the results way off at that point. You don't think that it would be like that, but it really is. Especially when you're dealing with something that doesn't yield significant gains to begin with. Like, you're literally looking for 6 or 8 horsepower in a vehicle that's already making, you know, in my case, you know, over 700 horsepower. Even a car making 500, 400, 300, those small amounts of power are going to be real hard to actually quantify objectively anyway at the drag strip. So you can imagine when these guys are on an engine dyno, they've got control over water temperature. They've got control for some degree over air temperature, fuel quality, fuel flow, the whole bit. Everything is there. They can have it all consistent, and that's where you get your, presumably anyway, it's where you get your results. That's how you quantify or qualify rather your results. Oh, Rip's saying, by the way, shout out to Ruben for running a 9.3 in his cat with just an upper pulley, although is supporting mods, but still very nice. Good deal. Someone saying Rico Suave, pretty much. Kobe's asking, have you used the Octane booster yet? No, I haven't. I have used it before, and I data logged it only as a fuel stabilizer. I didn't really take a look at it as far as a, I was really looking at knock at that point. That was when I had a really funky, I don't know, fuel quality. Anyway, but for this, I haven't used it. I haven't data logged it yet, so we're going to find out. I did hit the car pretty hard yesterday when I did that that draggy video in Mexico, and I can tell you, I don't know that it's going to help it too much. I mean, the fueling looks good, the voltages look good. Every once in a while, you'll get some random noise that pops up, but it's never. It's just stuff that you see with a knock sensor. You know, they do pick up on random noise here and there. You never really think that it's actual knock unless you see it get over like 3 volts. It gets over 3 volts, it's probably really knock. But These are in areas that I've got stock timing values with extra fuel going into them. So I wouldn't think that there'd be an issue, but all of that doesn't matter. Poor fuel quality is poor fuel quality, and you can't get around that. So that's why we have NOx sensors. Dr. Div saying, oh, talking about the platform, saying, no, it's an old school Dodge. I mean, yeah, he's obviously been given some old school ways of thinking on how to put that thing together too. Sovereign saying he was thinking that 426 being aluminum for some weight savings. I would hope that they would. I mean, that's, really the only way you can go about it. I can tell you, it's the only way it makes sense to be just completely transparent. I mean, when the 1320 was coming out, I was thinking, oh my God, this is their opportunity to bring back the aluminum 426. They're already using it in the drag pack. I was like, damn, it's not like they don't know how to make it. They're using it now. And so that's really what I was hoping for. And you saw where that went. And if they decide to go that route, that would be fantastic. A detuned 426 in that configuration, again, making about 575 horsepower, a solid 100 horsepower bump over the 392, which is what it would take, by the way, to even notice a difference. Coupled with the weight savings, it's about just shy of 100 pounds. Yeah, now we're talking. But here's the problem with that car. And say what you will about, well, it's going to be track focused and all this other stuff. Circuit track stuff is all near and dear to my heart. Really not up the wheelhouse of a car that started off life as a luxury sedan, which is what these cars did start off as from Mercedes. But it's not to say that you can't make it work. So what would be my thoughts on that? Well, I would say, look, the thing is going to have to be fast. It's going to have to handle well. It's going to have to do a lot of things really well. It's going to have to come with some premium parts, which means it's going to come with some premium pricing. The bottom line is this. It doesn't matter what you do with that 426. A stock run-of-the-mill Hellcat will walk all over it. And that is kind of the problem. And you say, yeah, well, you can go, it's a ACR and it's for handling. It's all of that. Look, there's guys that take Hellcats to closed circuit places all the time. And one of the things that's said about the Hellcats is that, look, you see them going around a track, they come out of corners like crazy, they haul ass, they do all this other stuff. Yeah, they may run hot, but run the right oil and you'll be fine. Where the ACR, if they ever make one, would really come into its own is if it's got heat exchangers all over the front of it like a Hellcat. And it's able to dump temperature, instead of having the heat exchanger for the supercharger, let's say it's extra cooling for the trans and the diff. And we've got extra, capacity for cooling for the engine and oil, everything, the whole bit. If it's a fluid, it gets extra cooling. That's the only way I could really sign off on that car. And then you could go out and run 20, 30-minute sessions with it and have fun with it. Albeit in a heavyweight car. It's still, no matter how much you lighten it up, trust me, that car is still going to be heavy. If they even make it, which I doubt that they're going to do. It'd be cool if they did, but the thing is, again, you've got to be really in love with that car to make it work. And here's the other side of it too. You might say, well, what about the Elephant? Well, the Elephant engine, I guess, is fine. I can only tell you that those guys that have tried to turn them up or really get aggressive with them have found that aluminum blocks don't do well with boost, especially when they're already making 1,000 horsepower. I don't know how well that thing is going to hold up long term. So, just saying. X is in saying, what up, Professor B? Got the arm flex. Ripped is in saying, Doc saying, I like having Mexico right around the corner. That's exactly right. Dr. Diff is out. Callis is asking, you go on your factory tires. The fastest he went on stock tires was 11 flat. I've never run my car on factory tires. I have run them on the Nittos, and the Nittos, I think I went a 1070 on the Nittos. It was a high 1070. So I was saying, oh, he's saying the 426 is legendary since electric is the next phase. What better way to send out the 426? That's true. I mean, I agree with you. You know, make it cool, but we'll see what they end up doing. I don't know. I've tried to speculate on that before, and I never get it right. Moto X is asking, is Pump California 91 Octane any good? No, it isn't. It's not very awesome at all. Don saying, hello, Mr. B. Mason, right along back in the day. Grumpy Jenkins said best launch is above bog and below wheel spin. That's true. So the idea is to the old adage would have like 2 miles an hour faster than the car is going wheel spin to keep it from bogging. In some applications that may be true, but yeah, no, these things, like the idea is just to keep those tires just barely hazing. If you feel them start to haze, just kind of slow down how you're rolling into the throttle. If when you roll into the throttle, they spool up even more, just grab a gear. But guys, with that, I am going to check out because it is getting late. We've been on here for about an hour. We're doing kind of a short run tonight. So with that, y'all have a great rest of your week. Love each and every one of you. Couldn't do it, wouldn't do it without you. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. Stay safe. And with that, we are out. That's a wrap. Adios.